You live in a gated community.
It's called a gated community.
To me, the gay community has started to become bullies.
Have you ever thought how your life might be different if you were gay?
Racism is alive and well in the gay community.
I just want us to have an open conversation, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, anybody. I want this to be a safe space for everyone.
Lord, I think I done pulled into I done pulled into somebody's gated community.
Gay community as us as a trans community.
Who is having that conversation?
What's up, Gabers? Welcome to the Gated Community Podcast. And if you are a dedicated listener, welcome back. So yeah, it's still Pride Month. And in the spirit of recognizing Pride Month, tonight we're covering rainbow washing and how Pride Month has gone from movement to marketing. In the past, I've spoken about my issue with the way corporations move and how businesses navigate during the month of Pride, all in the name of capitalism and under the guise of full support. Tonight, I'm diving deeper. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hi, gay. Happy Pride Month. We are sashaying away with deals. This month at the Butter Shop, we're running a special deal. If you can prove that you're queer, you get 3 pints off your choice of creamed, chucked, or drowned butter. And if you do mouth stuff, you get 4. We love gay, and it's awesome. So come visit. And we also make candles now. Wouldn't a candle be nice for gay stuff? In the bedroom or just hanging out. Yeah, we wouldn't. Wouldn't your partner want butter from the original old maid's home? We have been making butter since 1945, and we've been accepting all people since the last 4 months. So yeah, we're gagging for you to come take a taste of Cecily's Butter Shop at Cecily's Butter Shop. My friend's mom, I think is gay, so we think it's cool. Turn it off, Willard.
Y'all head on down to the Butter Shop and enter code TGC for the gated community and get you 0% off.
Oh, Carissa, please!
If it's not already apparent from the onslaught of rainbow-themed merchandise on display at malls across America, June is Gay Pride Month. And if you hear me repeat the words June and Pride, you'll understand the relevancy at the end of this episode.
June is LGBTQ+ Pride Month, and in the past 50 years, it has grown into a massive money-making machine with an estimated 1,500 Pride events globally.
Even here in our hometown of Washington, D.C., Pride brings in $50 million in economic impact to this city alone. I think it's almost $75 million in the Los Angeles area. Denver, Colorado, $25 million.
It's become a month where big businesses can show their support for their community and their employees, and try to win over the support of LGBTQ+ consumers by shelling out millions on Pride-related ads, sponsorships, and merchandise.
AKA pimps up, hoes down. And while the over-commercialization of holidays tend to incite naysayers, critics, and purists, it's hard to see this turn of events as anything but a win for both the LGBT community and humanity as a collective. No, it's not. It's really not. It's not hard to see because I see right through it. But we about to get into that in a minute. In the not too distant past, it would have been unthinkable that retailers including Macy's, Target, and even gun-loving music lyrics censoring Walmart would be stocking their shelves with LGBTQ Pride merch. But when does representation stop and commodification start? Tonight, I'm going to take you through the experience of how major brands and big corporations went from deliberate discrimination and commercial resignation to overstocking their shelves in stores and online markets with blatant LGBTQ+ merchandise and commercials, inadvertently placing us on display like we some kind of prop, selling our sexuality to the highest bidder, LGBT trafficking.
Rainbow currency.
Let's start with capitalism. What is capitalism? Capitalism is a political ideology in which an economic system is based on profit. A for-profit society, and the basis of that profit is contingent upon the private ownership of the means of production and their operation. And when I say there, I mean the capitalists, or the person or persons who own a product with the intent to sell for profit. The market value of said product or item is usually higher than the wholesale cost. This is because there are certain factors that the capitalists will use when conjuring the cost of their product. These factors are usually in the best interest of the business and at the expense of the consumer, we being the consumers. These factors will likely include production and utility expenses that were used to make the product, and expenses for tools, time, and labor needed to conceive and design said product. Otherwise, there is no generated revenue from the sale of goods and services, or no return on the investment. Remember, the essential feature of capitalism is the motive to make a profit. That's very important that you remember that throughout the rest of this episode, because it will all make sense. So realistically, unless you're in the 1%, you probably don't have the funds on hand to pay overhead costs, such as salaries to employees, things like rent. And when I say rent, this also includes, but is not limited to, commercial office space. The rent or mortgage you pay if working out of your home is also an expense. Things like utilities, like electricity and water, be it at home or in an office space. And although you may not pay utility bills directly if working out of office suites, they're usually included and listed as a flat rate in your lease agreement for your office suite and paid for directly by the property manager, with the property manager being the capitalist in this scenario. Standard funding for a small business or a startup company can also include parking validation, definitely computers and software, hardware, furniture, and business taxes. And we haven't even gotten into the goods and services and cost of goods sold that will support the production of the product. Cost of goods sold refers to the direct cost of producing the goods sold by a company. This amount usually includes the cost of materials and labor. So in order for a business to earn back that cost that it took to procure the parts and supplies needed to make a Dyson fan, for instance, manufacture the fan, ship the fan to the merchant. For the sake of comprehension, we'll just say Target. The shipping cost accrued from getting the fan to Target, then to sit on a shelf in Target before it's purchased and arrives at your home. In order to ensure that your bottom line refers to a company's earnings, profit, net income, or earnings per share, is not compromised by your gross profit. Gross profit is the cost of goods sold deducted from your total revenue. The capitalists will simultaneously aim to increase their revenue by stimulating their top line growth while improving their efficiency, otherwise known as cutting costs.
But nothing in this world that I like more than checks. Money. All I really want to see is the money.
This can range from small things like scaling back on office supplies up to employee termination. Another way the capitalists can and sometimes will recoup their cost of goods sold is to increase the cost of that Dyson fan by including fees like interest or whatever fees they decide to come up. They just usually just name whatever. Oh, this gonna be a Wednesday fee. This gonna be a hot product fee, something like that. Or simply inflating the overall cost of the fan. The latter is easier to do when the capitalist or a company can firmly stand behind the efficacy, the longevity, and the appeal of the product. Reputation truly matters in a capitalist society because when you're known for what's presumed to be a top-tier product, it benefits the business because consumers will know what to expect when it's time to pay and will likely be under the assumption that they are getting what they pay for. Like the saying goes, you get what you pay for. Not all the time, though.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Even if it's just based on the name, Dyson. It's no secret that Dyson is an expensive brand. I'd go as far to say ridiculously priced.
A small loan of $1 million.
It's also well known that Dyson can charge what they do because their products are incomparable and their reputation is pristine. But that doesn't make it right.
And then you come in and you treat this like a joke.
The essential feature of capitalism is the motive to make a profit.
Now, I don't know all the components of a hairdryer, but in what world should a tool used to blow dry hair be priced at $500?
Jesus Christ.
You better find yourself an economical version that does the same job and gives you the same results. Or stick your head out a car window and drive down the street while the sun is out. I mean, it's drying your hair.
Jesus Christ.
Also, if anybody got a Dyson plug, DM me at The Gated Community on Instagram. Let me stay focused. Listen, I'm not here to teach finance and economics, but it's important to know where we went to understand where we're going. Central characteristics of capitalism include capital accumulation, competitive markets, price system, private property, property rights recognition, voluntary exchange, and wage labor. At its core, it's all about supply and demand. There really is no benevolence in capitalism. Sure, maybe in comparison to socialism, but in a capitalist economy, both parties to a voluntary exchange transaction have their own interest in the outcome, but neither can obtain what he or she wants without addressing what the other wants. It's this rational, in my personal opinion, irrational self-interest that can lead to economic prosperity. So they say.
Daddy, chill.
Rainbow politics.
Yes, it is exactly this rational self-interest that can lead to economic prosperity, not for the common good, but for the exclusive gain.
Bill Clinton was really the first president to openly court the gay community, to openly embrace their priorities. He pushed for a workplace non-discrimination law. He had, as you pointed out, openly gay advisors. He pushed for AIDS funding. He tried to get the military to open its doors to gays and lesbians, didn't succeed, got a compromise that people didn't like called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So when this came up, it felt like a betrayal, I think, to a lot of his friends who considered it an act of calculation of politics over principle.
But President Clinton, deemed to be one of the worst homophobes to serve in the Oval Office after signing the DOMA bill in 1996, the Defense of Marriage Act, that declared legal marriage would only be recognized between a man and a woman, also declared June Gay and Lesbian Pride Month in 1999 and 2000.
Hi, gay.
The story goes that Clinton went up for re-election and was feeling the pressure from the Republicans to instate DOMA. So after 4 days of being on his campaign trail, he flew to the White House in the middle of the night, crept into the Oval Office, and made a private decision to sign a bill that he allegedly did not agree with. But his re-election was more important than his personal feelings, and his morality had become sabotaged.
She's scared, y'all. That's what it really is. She's scared. So she feel like she got to go all the way hard. She got to go to the very end. She got to take it all the way there. No shade. She's scared.
And once he'd stamped his John Hancock, he knew that he'd sealed the deal for his second term. Even if it meant making a deal with the devil by giving birth to a proclamation that would impact the lives of his White House staff for years to come. The tension was thick, both inside and outside the White House. Bill Clinton used capitalism by manipulation. He played the political game for personal gain. He used the popularity of the anti-gay agenda and the abatement of the LGBT community as leverage to breed his own succession for another 4 years of holding the most powerful position in the world as the President of the United States.
The essential feature of capitalism is the motive to make a profit.
Clinton understood the demand of the Republican Party and supplied them with the DOMA bill because he knew that by providing his signature and endorsing the bill, he would profit in his re-election. It was transactional. But capitalism usually is. Both parties engage in a voluntary exchange to have their own interests met in the outcome. And they knew that neither could obtain what he or she wanted without addressing what the other wants. It is this rational self-interest that can lead to economic prosperity, right? No, because in this case, it was the oppression of gay Americans for the White House. That was the deal. It was like good cop, bad cop with this administration. Bill would do damage, and Hillary was there to control it.
On November 30th, 1993, then-President Bill Clinton signed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which banned openly gay and lesbian Americans from serving openly in the military. It also prohibited the harassment of, quote, closeted homosexuals, when that should have just been all homosexuals. Later on September 21st, 1996, he signed the Defense of Marriage Act, banning federal recognition of same-sex marriage and defining marriage as a legal union between one man and one woman. It certainly put Clinton at the top of the list of the worst homophobes to serve in the Oval Office.
And then here comes Hillary cleaning up the mess.
Tell you how delighted I am to join with all of you from the State Department and USAID, and indeed from departments across our government, and many guests who are here in the State Department.
Can we wrap it up? What the f are you talking about?
Celebrating Pride Month. And the purpose of this occasion is to
wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up.
To recognize with gratitude the contributions made by LGBT members of the State Department family. Celebrate the progress that is being made here in our own country toward advancing the rights of LGBT Americans.
Shut when you think about it.
Then from 2009 to 2016, each year he was in office, President Barack Obama also declared June LGBT Pride Month.
That's the principle that's guided my administration over the past 4.5 years.
We passed a hate crimes bill in Matthew Shepard's name.
I've also asked HHS to add the AIDS virus to the list of contagious diseases for which immigrants and aliens seeking permanent residence in the United States can be denied entry.
We lifted the HIV entry ban, released the first national HIV/AIDS strategy. We strengthened the Violence Against Women Act to protect LGBT victims. We told Medicare that we told hospitals that accept Medicare and Medicaid that they have to treat LGBT patients just like everybody else. Starting next year, the Affordable Care Act will ban insurance companies from denying someone from coverage just for being LGBT. We put in place new policies that treat transgender Americans with dignity and respect. And because no one should have to hide who they love to serve the country that they love, we ended Don't Ask, Don't Tell once and for all.
Later, President Joe Biden declared June LGBTQ+ Pride Month in 2021. When companies, businesses, corporations, and brands began to show their advocacy for the LGBT community through advertising in the 1980s and 1990s, it was high risk, but in a way, the marketing campaigns made sense. Sure, it wasn't as overt as it is today. The popular marketing scheme at the time was passive-aggressive. Brands wouldn't directly come out and say that they fully support and stand behind the LGBT community. Instead, they create acting scenarios and commercials that combated homophobia. Advertisers would include subversive messages targeting the queer community under the radar of mainstream homophobic attention. Gays and lesbians, while still feeling like outsiders, became content with taking what they could get because at the time, we had nothing. And something is better than nothing, right? But don't clap and get all excited yet. These brands and brains behind the ads were calculating, careful to avoid recourse by coloring within the lines of political agendas and staying on the right side of the proverbial fence. In the 80s, LGBTQ+ advertising was reserved for alcohol and tobacco brands. This particular industry was considered low risk because the percentage of the religious right-wing consumer base was very low. And listen, pardon my cynicism, but this is what toleration looks like. Flipping through a magazine and landing on a page that promotes libations that can lead to rehab. It's almost like there's this nonverbal communication between the ad and the reader, where the ad is saying, "Drink me, I'll make you feel good. I'm not the healthiest choice, and I'm sure you're tired of coping with your homosexuality on your own. So drink me, I can ease your pain. And if you drink enough of me, I can help expedite your need to end your life by giving you organ failure. And I'll be right there to hold your hand while you die." Wow. I guess a picture really is worth 1,000 words.
Oh, Carissa, please!
But it's like a catch-22, because while you now know that the Absolute Vodka brand has the brass balls to place their ad in gay magazines to mark some sort of alliance, they're also enticing you to consume a drink that could lead to perpetual remorse.
Blow it up, that's how we ball out.
Closing the ad with a rap bow with a note inside that reads, "Drink responsibly." It was in 1981 when the Absolute Vodka brand would print a full-page ad in an all-gay magazine, the LA Advocate, and followed up with another ad in the magazine titled After Dark. And just when the LGBT community began to feel a turn of the inclusion tide, ladies and gentlemen,
from the capital city of the United States of America, Washington, D.C.,
I introduce to you the Reagan administration.
Let's get ready to rumble!
The United States and the CDC shocked the world when they announced the AIDS epidemic had hit home in 1981. Although cases were first identified in 1978, it was a wide-spreading, fast-acting, deadly virus transmitted through sexual activity and intravenous drug use. It was a potent virus that was circulating fast, but not faster than Washington, D.C. took to the airwaves to broadcast the virus was deemed a gay disease. A gay disease? A gay disease? Okay.
In the early 80s, the world was hit by the AIDS epidemic, and the gay community was hit hardest. AIDS became known as a gay disease. AIDS became known as a gay disease. A gay disease. In fact, it was originally called GRID, which means gay-related immune deficiency.
No way.
It's true. Many people think that the government didn't act quickly enough because it was considered a gay disease.
They didn't, Wanda. They didn't. From Reagan to Bush to Clinton.
So the LGBTQ community had to fight it themselves.
It would be 4 years before Reagan would publicly say the word AIDS. Just to even say the word AIDS, it would take him 4 years. And another 2 years before he delivered his first speech about the AIDS crisis in 1987.
incoming message from the Gated Community Podcast.
The Ronald Reagan administration deliberately ignored the effects of the disease and intentionally failed to act because he and others deemed it, quote unquote, a gay disease. With that idea being embedded in the mind of millions of people nationwide, back then and even today, there's a heavy influential presence of those who believe that contracting HIV/AIDS cannot happen to heterosexuals, when in fact, statistics show that Black women account for the highest percentage of new HIV infections. While new infections for Black women declined 21% from 2010 to 2016, they still accounted for 6 in 10 new HIV infections. The announcement was intended to inspire fear and further banish the LGBTQ+ community. This was a scary period for all, mostly because no one knew much about the virus outside of how we contract it. And I know y'all probably like, how we go from capitalism to talk about AIDS to talk about, listen, it's gonna all make sense. Trust the process. Okay, y'all just stick with me.
Every day you heard about somebody else who had died. Everybody was torn between grief and terror and absolute rage at the government because President Reagan did not mention the word for years.
Mr. Reagan said prevention is better than a cure.
From the government, there were no conversations or measures for treatment regarding AIDS and HIV. Condoms and abstinence were attached to prevention measures. Condoms that were primarily given to others in gay spaces.
When I was personally diagnosed, I accepted it right there on the spot. The doctor only confirmed what I already knew, because I felt I'm gay. I have AIDS. Without even knowing, I just felt like, being gay is AIDS.
But not only did former President Reagan provoke fear in persons who were highly susceptible in contracting the virus, he penetrated the spirit of the nation. His press secretary, Larry Speaks, What a fitting name for someone who didn't know how to speak. And when he did speak, all he spoke was bullshit.
Okay, well, what you said was some bull.
Clown ass. Larry Speaks was the clown at the head of the circus ring for other White House staff and primary media, joking and laughing about the fatal virus while informing his immature audiences and with no grave concern insisted that Reagan knew nothing about the virus, inferring to the press that Reagan did not care. And he didn't. That punk ass, that nigga, he ain't care.
Fuck, whatever. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Do I look like I give a fuck? Because I don't. I don't care. I don't care. I'm great. Fuck them. I don't care. I don't care.
You know what? Give them a round of applause. What a stellar administration they were to set terror and anxiety in the minds of nurses, doctors, basically all hospital staff.
Klaus Norm is the first person that I knew that was dying of AIDS. Going to visit him, it was crazy.
The Klaus was at the hospital. It was like they had found an alien from Area 51, all in plastic and covered up. They put me in a jumpsuit and a mask and a helmet and gloves. They said, we don't know what this is. And I walked in, took the gloves off, the jumpsuit, and I got him and hugged him, held him, kissed him, and I could see the doctors banging on the window.
So it wasn't much of a surprise when the epidemic caused major setbacks in the LGBTQ+ representation in advertising. Probably even expected. Advertisers who proposition and work with gay media scenes quickly withdrew. In a way, the AIDS virus gave further justification for brands and businesses to acquiesce to homophobia by disrupting any affiliation and pulling publications. But not Absolute Vodka. The liquor brand was unwavering. During the peak of the AIDS crisis in 1986, Absolute published an ad featuring gay artist and activist Keith Haring. It was a big win on all three sides: the capitalist, the consumer, and the LGBTQ+ community. You know, I heavily considered speaking about the correlation between 1, the manufactured AIDS virus, and 2, the scope of amplified revenue, propelled profit margins, and capital gains from clinical research and big pharma treatment plans, including medication.
The essential feature of capitalism is the motive to make a profit.
But I'll save my conspiracy theory for another episode. You hear Larry? You hear how he speaks? This is what was going on. These were the kind of conversations that were being had in the White House during press conferences when people were trying to learn and become educated about the AIDS virus. People wanted to know what to do. People just wanted to know. And this is how they were conducting themselves. People just wanted to know what the fuck was going on. Like, what do I have to do to prevent myself from dying? I have a friend, I have a brother who has contracted AIDS, and I need to know what to do to help him to stay alive. These are the concerns that people were having, and legitimately and rightfully so, the concerns that needed to be addressed. And this was the response from the White House. And shout out to American journalist Lester Kinsolving for standing 10 toes down and trying to get the tea about, what was actually going on. You know what I'm saying? He was a real one. He didn't care about the laughter and the audience surrounding him. He didn't really care if Larry, threw his little jokes at him. He didn't care. He was there for the right reason. So salute to you, Lester. And while we're on the subject, I can't close out this part of the show without giving former President George Bush some clout. It was a full circle moment when he died on World AIDS Day.
Goodbye.
And we cared almost as much as he cared for the LGBT community. He didn't give a fuck about the LGBT community and was probably part of the plot to extinguish gays and lesbians. I mean, after all, he and his administration were in full support of the gay conversion therapy movement. You want to know what that's about? You want to know what gay conversion therapy is? Check out episode titled Eat, Pray, Gay of this season. But yeah, so he and his administration were in full support of the gay conversion therapy movement, including but not limited to monetary funding. Blazing his campaign trails, he capitalized off of gay votes, promising to parenthetically do more by funding programs around HIV education and prevention once elected. After being sworn in during his inaugural ceremony, he refused to do everything that he had promised. He ain't give a... If I don't give a fuck had a definition, it was George Bush.
George H.W. Bush, taking a closer look at the former president's record on HIV and AIDS. Bush died the day of World AIDS Day, right in the evening. An irony not lost on many HIV/AIDS activists who remember Bush Sr. for his lack of action in the 1990s as the HIV/AIDS crisis raged on. Bush said little about the crisis during his vice presidency under Ronald Reagan, who didn't even mention AIDS for over 6.5 years of his presidency. Despite promises to do more after he was elected president, George H.W. Bush refused to address and fund programs around HIV/AIDS education and prevention, as well as drug treatment.
He stood firm in opposing the extinction of marriage rights to homosexuals and said at a press conference that he believed it to be his responsibility to uphold the traditional sanction of marriage between man and woman. Conservative groups praised him. Gay rights activists criticized him, arguing that the president was further trying to codify discrimination into law. Let's let journalist Stephen Thrasher explain to us why it's a disgrace for us to celebrate George Bush on World AIDS Day.
Because it's ironic that that Bush died, and this evening I had been at events here in New York City honoring the dead, and George H.W. Bush was a very focal point of activism of gay activists while he was in office. By the time he left office, about 100,000 people had died of AIDS here in the United States. About more than 1 million had died globally. And he wasn't some bystander at any point. He was vice president of the United States throughout the Reagan administration when the Reagan administration was not taking active steps. And as president, he was spending money on the wrong things. He was spending money to invade Iraq, to continue militarism and many of the things that exacerbate HIV and AIDS when you're not putting the right resources into them. I think it's good to really remember a couple things about his legacy. One, that one of the most salient actions against the inaction of the United States around HIV/AIDS was when AIDS activists went to the White House in the Ashes Action, and they took the.
When was this?
This was October 11th, 1991, I believe, and thousands of people marched to the White House, and they actually took the remains of their dead loved ones, and they threw them onto the White House lawn. And if you haven't seen it, it brings tears to your eyes to see this. And it wasn't the only time that activists approached President Bush, H.W. Bush, so dramatically. They did so at his home, and even on the night where he lost re-election, they took the body of one of their comrades who had said he wanted to have a funeral of fury and anger. They took his body to Bush's re-election headquarters. And that was because President H.W. Bush was not doing enough for HIV and AIDS. He was telling people that it was a matter of personal responsibility.
How powerful of a statement it is to relinquish the cremated ashes of a loved one onto the grounds of the very place said loved one and their entire community reached out for help, only to be met with rejection, discrimination, exploitation, false promises, cruelty, and abandonment. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. There's nothing like a full circle moment.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise.
Rainbow advertising.
Speaking of vodka, I need a drink.
Blow it up, blow it up. That's how we ball out.
As much as the LGBT community was incredibly thankful to the vodka brand, it was the provocative and galvanizing campaign ads of the global-based fashion brand, the United Colors of Benetton, one of my favorite stores to shop at Phipps Plaza in Atlanta. Their ads would send trimmers from Italy to the United States. The man behind the camera, one Oliverio Toscani, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was one to push the limits with his reactionary-induced photographs. Boundaries were off limits. They were scandalous, distasteful, alluring, and seductive. Toscani's ads were more than Italian-styled garments, unique colors, and high-priced shoes and accessories. Toscani made it clear that the clothing line came with an unpredictable but exciting, powerful statement of social commitment. With each campaign came a new round of backlash, censorship, and, of course, a hefty amount of press. From AIDS victims to the blood-stained clothing of a dead soldier, interracial and homosexual relationships, non-white or LGBTQ plus people, Toscani shied away from nothing. It paid off both culturally and financially. The infamous condoms photo shoot by Toscani in 1991 was the first of many to keep the rainbow acronym in the mouths of all communities. The Colored Condoms campaign was a nod to the AIDS crisis, which was ravaging the younger generations in the late 80s and early 90s. In November 1997, Benetton began selling a complete range of colored, reliable, and up-to-the-minute condoms in the UK. Toscani told the New York Times at the time, "I have found out that advertising is the richest and most powerful medium existing today. So I feel responsible to do more than to say, our sweater is pretty.
I feel pretty.
Oh, so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
Then there's a David Kirby AIDS concept Photoshop by Toscani in 1992. In November of 1990, Life magazine published journalism student Teresa Ferre's image of a gay activist and AIDS victim, David Kirby, as he lay on his deathbed. 2 years later, Benetton used the image for its campaign after enhancing its color with oil paint. Despite the backlash by many AIDS activists who believed it spread fear of sufferers, commoditized suffering, and ultimately launching a global campaign to boycott the company, Kirby's father, Bill, stated, "Benetton is not using us, we're using Benetton. If that photograph helps someone, then it's worth whatever pressure we have to go through." It was, according to Benetton, the first public campaign to address AIDS. That year, the disease had become the #1 cause of death for U.S. men aged 25 to 44. Benetton claimed it wanted to go beyond purely preventative measures and touch upon subjects such as solidarity with AIDS patients. A year later, Toscani campaigned for HIV positivity, capturing a tattoo that reads HIV positive on the top right of an ass cheek, careful to keep the camera angled for censorship. Various AIDS groups sued Benetton over their commercial exploitation of suffering. Hate it or love it, Toscani created a space for intense issues that were playing out in real time within the LGBT community. Within that space, he created voices and listening ears.
I don't have a bad attitude. Maybe I am angry inside. I've been through stuff, so I'm angry. Yeah.
Remember, in a capitalist economy, both parties to a voluntary exchange transaction have their own interests in the outcome, but neither can obtain what he or she wants without addressing what the other wants. Benetton, with the collaboration of Toscani and his unapologetic advertising, is a classic case of capitalism because despite the backlash and boycotting and lawsuits, and even the period where sales plummeted and the gross profit to bottom line ratio was upside down in response to the controversial topics, the founder of Benetton is worth $3 billion. Yeah, that B with a B, like Beyonce.
What's my name?
Today, he's worth $3 billion, and Benetton continues to generate millions in annual revenue. Additionally, the LGBTQ community were also compensated in representation. Doesn't always have to be monetary. Did Benetton commodify the LGBT community? Maybe. But ultimately, both sides expressed their own interest, and both parties walked away with getting what they wanted.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
That's all capitalism really is, recognizing supply and demand, taking advantage of an opportunity or creating one if there isn't one available, and benefiting from either the supply or the demand.
Rainbow washing.
Rainbow washing, also known as pink washing, is when a company or other institution lies about their support of the LGBTQ+ community to sell products. And of course, not all marketing during Pride is rainbow washing, but it happens a lot. Ask yourself these questions to avoid being fooled. Are they using the rainbow to hide other oppressive action? Are they only vocal about LGBTQ+ people and our rights during Pride? Do they hire us? And what about in leadership? Do they support us with their resources, policies, and actions? If you really want to support us, you can't just do it in June and you can't just add a rainbow.
Wait, before we start going in on these gutter snipes, let's reveal some statistics, shall we? Reading facts are like eating snacks while watching good television. Delicious. All right, real fast, because this is the part. I'm about to wrap this up. We about to wrap this up. I'm about to bring this in. I'm about to land this plane.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
I said all of the aforementioned for this. Well, not this part, but coming up. So wait, stay tuned. Should we do another word from our sponsor? Oh, my DoorDash is on the way. Let me hurry up. All right, so what happened with Ellen? Ellen DeGeneres outed herself on her self-titled 1997 sitcom, advertising including Chrysler and JCPenney boycotted the episode, and Wendy's stopped advertising altogether. In the months that followed, religious groups began picketing the studio. There were death threats, bomb scares, and endless hate mail. The network responded by backing off on promoting the show and even aired disclaimers before every episode suggesting there may be themes that are, quote-unquote, inappropriate for children. Eventually, the show was canceled. 1994, IKEA. They became the very first company to feature a gay couple in a mainstream ad. IKEA ran the ad after 10 p.m. in 3 markets, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. It did this intentionally so as not to conflict with family hour programming, but the concession did little to silence the objections of the American Family Association and its leaders who called for boycotts of IKEA stores. The retailer, however, continued to air the ad, which was part of a lifestyle campaign featuring different types of consumers, including a divorced mom, adopting parents, and an empty nester couple. Volkswagen. In 1997, Volkswagen aired its Sunday afternoon spot, which featured two young guys rescuing a piece of furniture discarded on the street in their VW Golf. Incidentally, the spot debuted on the Ellen Coming Out episode, but unlike the IKEA spot, the relationship between these two men was intentionally left vague. Were they friends, roommates, or boyfriends? That allowed for multiple interpretations meant to cushion against criticism. The spot was perhaps the first in a category known hereafter as gay vague. John Hancock Financial Services. In 2000, John Hancock Financial Services aired a spot where two Caucasian women are in line at a crowded airport immigration line holding an infant girl with Asian features. As they're waiting, they coo over the sleeping baby. One might infer from the dialogue that the two women are a couple on their way home with their newly adopted daughter. The tagline, "Insurance for the unexpected, investments for opportunities, John Hancock." Then on the cutaway with only audio, one woman says to the other, "You're going to make a great mom." Her partner replies, "So are you." The company, of course, caught flack for the ad, and while they didn't pull it, they did send it back to the editing room, pulled out the cutaway dialogue from the end, and ran a re-released gay vague version. Heinz. In 2008, America was still struggling to come to terms with the LGBTQ PDA. The Heinz commercial went for it anyway, releasing a commercial for deli mayo. It opened on a typical morning scene as the family gets ready to start their day. There's an obligatory kiss as dad goes off to work. Nothing amiss here except that the man's spouse is also a man. A week after its airing, Heinz caved to pressure after receiving hundreds of complaints from consumers suggesting it was offensive and inappropriate to see two men kissing. Gillette. Even today, any of these ads might still cause a stir in some communities. The difference? Today, advertisers are much more likely to stay the course because the backlash from the other side for caving to social pressure will be that much greater. That said, there's still plenty of room for companies to push the envelope and show consumers what America really looks like. Last month, Gillette did just that, running a documentary-style commercial featuring a father teaching his transgender son how to shave. Simple idea, well executed. Being an ad man or an ad woman may not be as noble a profession as, say, a teacher or a social worker or a mental health counselor, but it's worth remembering that a good advertising campaign can do more than just sell widgets and pimp out sexual orientations. Can they? They can use their craft to change the way people see the world, shape public opinion, and focus on the greater good. Caving into pressure is the antithesis of that.
I'm still on the fence about woke advertising. They're still selling razors. It is, right. It's taking a social conscious for profit, right? So it's not lost on me, right? So it's like, this is a for profit, you are being sold something. And they're doubling down on their sort of, woke advertising. Right. And they've come back now with this. And I think that if you're going to do something, this is what you do. Okay, it's real.
Right. One person. Yeah.
Anybody can identify with this because you're looking at a real person. It's a real moment with the guy's real dad. Okay, right. Like you can identify with this regardless. Those people in that last ad that Gillette did, I've never met one of those guys.
Right. Yeah,
the people that they were saying you shouldn't be. I'm like, I don't know those people. But yet you're trying to tell me that I'm one of those people. Like it was a really weird sort of thing, and that was a misstep.
Please stand by for further details. We return you now to your regularly scheduled program.
People sometimes ask why we stand up when a court judge or president enters the room. But we've been conditioned to believe that this is what you're supposed to do. If only gays could get the same respect. Not saying that you should stand up when we walk into a room, but acknowledge and respect us because that's what you're supposed to do. When it comes to gay advertisers, the thing is, we don't need you as much as you want our money. We now know that as a community, we hold the power to money exchange for profit. Let me not speak for all. I don't care about pride apparel and flags and merchandise.
And some organizations are trying to make sure these corporations are really walking the walk for the LGBTQ+ community, not just using pride as a marketing opportunity.
Walking into Target and seeing a corner section designated to rainbow socks and sun visors does not excite me or make me any more inclined to feel seen or valued. So what does real representation and support look like? It starts behind the scenes. Not with something tangible that will shrink in the dryer. Also, just because we're gay doesn't mean that we are not attracted to regular clothing that lack homosexual spirited designs. The thing is, we're regular people. We like regular things and we work regular jobs. True inclusion is shown through the hiring of gays and lesbians and everyone in between to hold spaces in leadership positions, to make decisions in marketing departments for campaigns and advertisements that actually make sense and not through statements that make a mockery of us.
Twitter is currently ramping over some of the new love seats advertised by IKEA. Some people express how they wanted to actually purchase the love seats, while others specifically bash them for design choices, like this bisexual love seat saying, when you change or to and, nobody believes you.
Or like what Burger King did this year when making hamburgers with 2 top buns and 2 bottom buns. How ridiculous. People laughed at that. I just shook my head. What a way to sexualize food and call it inclusion for a group of people who are associated with high sex drives and promiscuity. Like, how many hands did that ad have to go through before reaching the airwaves? Nike endorses us for a month. Throughout the month of June, there's a new batch of shoes and apparel with the Roy G. Biv print. But if I wanted to purchase a pair of Pride Nikes in January or any other random month, it's not an option.
You look and you find out, that they're doing lots of really, really horrible stuff the other 364 days of the year.
All of these things are for profit. Capitalism.
The essential feature of capitalism is the motive to make a profit.
Now, as companies have been moving forward with Pride Month, as they have been every year, they're attempting to help bolster and promote the aesthetics of Pride Month by showcasing it from their products.
You manufacture clothes stamped with rainbows, we give you money. So we're effectively paying for how you assume we should be and want to be represented. Give us jobs that have applications that don't require us to disclose our sexual orientation so that you can reach your quota. It's like affirmative action all over again. How about knowledge-based hiring based on what we know and not who we sleep with? And giving us the option to not disclose our sexual orientation? Genius, because selecting this option further underscores the assumption that we're not heterosexual. I mean, in a straight world, who'd have a problem with answering that they are a straight person on a job application? What else? Support gay businesses. Until the 90s, corporate sponsorships weren't a thing for Pride organizers. The marches and rallies were made up of nonprofits and other members of the LGBT community. Then homosexuality became more accepted in everyday life, and it didn't go unnoticed by big companies with a national presence. They saw and had opportunity to cash in, and boy, did they.
At the time, it was really great that a big bank with a national presence is marching in the Gay Pride Parade. But then at a certain point, it became less about inclusivity and more about a marketing opportunity.
They began to take advantage of the vulnerability of the LGBT community because of our need to feel included. It was a play on psychology. Well played, I must say. But listen, we have had it.
Doha, Donna! Doha!
We stood up for ourselves against the machine who refused us aid when our peers were diagnosed with AIDS in the 80s. We took Bush by the balls and fed him his karma on World AIDS Day after he denounced our existence. We stood up to the NCTA and family television when Ellen outed herself on daytime TV. And now I'm giving a great big giant fuck you to big business corporations and brands who continue to use us for clout and profit.
You know what? You have nothing else to do.
Did you stop in front of me? I'm driving, trying not to hit people like you.
Get out of my face.
I'm trying not to hit people like you.
Cocksucking idiot. Fuck you.
All over.
Because now, us gays, we are the doctors who treat patients with HIV. We are the talk show hosts. We work in hair and makeup, and we're also scoring touchdowns and hitting home runs in America's first love, sports. You discriminate against us in the work environment, and we're the ones being hired to litigate the case. Your family court judges thump their Bible and try to prevent us from obtaining sole or even joint custody, but we're the ones supervising the visits. We're in your mouth doing dental work. We're at your dealerships constructing and selling you cars. We're in your neighborhood building and selling houses. But when you know better, you do better. And now that we know we're being pimped for your profit, for me, I can't speak for nobody else, but for me, it stops here. You can go fuck yourself and kiss the rainbow while you're down there.
Goodbye.
It's called a gated community. I'm in a gated community. All the gays are locked.
You live in a gated community.
The girls act like you can't get in a gated community. Girl, I've been in so many gated communities. If you don't live there and you talking about you pulling up to a bitch house, that's trespassing. Especially when it's a gated community.
African people are not pro-homosexual.
Who is having that conversation?